Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto teleported in Vampire's Night in Harem? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Sound of slamming woke a 4-year-old child and he sat up, rubbing his eyes tiredly while looking around in confusion. What had woken him up? A scream erupted from somewhere in the building and he tensed. But then, as he listened, the screaming stopped abruptly, leaving a deafening silence that made the boy shiver. He got up silently, his barely forming vampire senses stretching as far as they could go to find some sort of confirmation of life around him. His eyes narrowed and he bit his lower dot. Sliding open the door silently, the little boy crept down the corridor without making a noise. He didn't know what was happening, but his Ka-san had told him to always be as soundless as possible. "You don't want to alert the enemy, nah?" She had asked him, and he had nodded, even though he didn't get it. Why would they have enemies? She sighed when he asked. "We're different from others," she told him patiently. "They don't like us because we're different from them." The little boy stopped at the end of the hallway and listened. His brows crinkled but then relaxed when he heard his Ka-san's voice, but he frowned again as he listened. The tone of her voice made him purr slightly, something wasn't right. He peeked into the other room curiously and couldn't contain a gasp when he got a sight of the room. The walls, curtains, everything was covered in blood. Then, as the realization hit him, so did the smell. The vampire in him licked it in anticipation, but he fought off the hunger as he looked to the middle of the room, where his mother sat, huddled over a bloody figure that the boy identified to be his father. But no, it couldn't have been, something in his mind protested. His father was strong, and no one could even make him bleed, much less tear through him. The little boy soon realized that his mother was scratched up as well, and his confusion and horror became apparent on his tiny face. His mother was strong as well, even though she wasn't as strong as his Otu-san. What had happened? But soon he heard a laugh and glanced around automatically before seeing the black shroud by the nearly black curtains. His eyes widened even more when he saw the bloody silver dagger held securely in the man's left hand. As if sensing him, his mother and the man turned to look at him at the same time. His mother looked as if she wanted to cry as he watched, and there was no disguising the fear or the haunted gleam in her ruby eyes. She quickly looked back at the man and screamed at him, but the boy couldn't hear. He had turned to look at the man before paralyzing terror consumed him. The man was smiling at him, and the boy tried to scream but couldn't. The smile sent warnings screaming through his head. That was the only thing apparent to him, his creepy smile. "Such malevolence shouldn't be allowed in your house," said a voice inside his head. He paid no attention to it as he gazed in trepidation. But soon the man stopped looking at him and walked to where his mother and father lay. He was aware of how his mother was yelling at him, telling him to run as far as he could, but something rooted him to the spot. He couldn't break free as he watched a man throw his father across the room. His Otu-san smashed against the wall with a sickening snap, causing paintings and artifacts to follow him down to the ground. A slap echoed through the room, and the boy watched as his mother fell to the floor screaming, the man falling on top of her. And the boy was forced to watch as the evil man did things to his mother, causing her to cry out from pain. The boy didn't even realize he was hyperventilating. It was something that would give him nightmares for years to come, and the boy found that he couldn't take his mother being in pain. Rage and hate swirled in his belly, making him forget that suffocating fear that had held him paralyzed. His eyes glowed with an unnatural red, showing his vampiric heritage for all to see. There was a shift in energy and, suddenly, he was free. Fangs exposed, he snarled and ran at the man, all but a black blur. The man didn't know what hit him until he was down on the ground rolling with pain. The boy looked down, a cold smile gracing his normally innocent dot. His right arm swung down, and he let the wind cut up the body painfully. Blood splattered across the already red walls. Something inside him throbbed, telling him that this was his duty to kill the cursed level E vampires that roamed the earth. His heart beat loudly even as he tore the man apart, limb by painful limb. He didn't notice when the man disappeared from his sight, all but bloody ashes. Underneath the newly revealed vampire, the boy blinked at the horrifying scene he had done. A weak cough was the thing that cleared his mind. My son looked quickly towards the voice of his mother and ran to her side as she coughed weakly. "Our pure blood legacy lives within you and your brother. Find H." And everything went silent once more. Zero pressed him together as he glared at the cluster of girls in front of the night class gates. He rubbed his nose unconsciously, as if trying to hold back the oncoming migraine starting to form in his head. He had the sudden impulse to just leave, but then he would be leaving innocence with bloodsuckers. Not that he was alone. The perfect across from him looked as if he already had a migraine, eye twitching when the perfect heard something from his fangirls, who watched him with rabid hungry eyes and whispered amongst themselves. That was Uchiha Sasuke, and he had already tried to scare off his devoted worshippers. Why did he have worshippers? Because he fit the tall, dark, handsome, mysterious, and deadly cliché to a T. From what Zero had heard, both of their pasts had something to do with family members getting killed by vampires, and Zero knew that when given the chance, Sasuke would do anything to eliminate all the bloodsuckers that inhabited the planet, not that Zero wouldn't do the same. He was pulled out of his thoughts when he heard a familiar clang that told him of the gates opening. He walked quickly in front of the girls as a boundary line they couldn't pass, and if one did, normally his glare would make the unlucky girl go scurry back into the crowd. He fingered his concealed bloody rose, wishing more than ever to take it, and pointed at the rabid girls waiting to see the other vampires. Zero watched with stony eyes as the night class exited the gates. Dislike seeped through his every pore as he glared at Curran Canham, the president that kept the other vampires in line. Zero could have snorted. As if vampires could be kept in line at all. They were damned creatures, unable to take orders. The only reason they were pretty was simple, it was easier to lure prey. There was no way the night class could handle going around without real blood. From what the silver-haired perfect knew, most of them were spoiled when it came to blood. It was perfectly logical that they weren't used to restraint like Zero. The noble vampires were glaring at him as if he were a pest that was annoying them, and Zero smirked. It always did make his day better when he could annoy those son of a bitches. Harem was watching the others emotionlessly and turned to face Zero after seeing the tenseness from his little group. There was an unmistakable warning in those rich wine eyes. Zero's smirk disappeared and a hateful sneer made its way to his face. One look at that damn Curran made his good mood just fly out the window. Harem glanced at his group again and saw some were staring at the Uchiha with unveiled disgust. Pure Blood cocked his head and gazed at Sasuke with both eyebrows raised, as if he wasn't impressed. Sasuke snarled at him in response. The vampire nobles around him narrowed their eyes at the Uchiha in extreme dislike, and Idol, the emotional one of the group, bared his teeth threateningly at Sasuke. How dare that little punk snarl at Kanam-sama. Harem looked away from the perfects, obviously dismissing them, and started to the dorms, not looking back to see if the other vampires were following him or not. The vampire nobles lingered, glaring at Sasuke before walking away. Yes, Zero was not the only one hated by the bloodsuckers. Soon the vampires were gone and, as the girl groups diminished, Sasuke passed Zero with a look that had the silver-haired perfect trying to figure out what the dark-haired perfect was thinking. Even though they were practically bonded siblings, Zero still thought of Sasuke as an enigma. Zero patrolled the school quietly as the sun set, and he began to feel just a tiny bit tired when a gust of wind wafted by, causing him to shiver somewhat. It wasn't like it was cold or anything, but the wind had brought a sense of bad feeling with it, causing Zero to feel the same sense of dread that had appeared that night so many years ago. His hunter senses screamed danger at him, and his body tensed slightly. Something big was going to happen, and soon. He put his hand inside of his jacket. Suddenly there was a rustle of leaves by the branches on Zero's left, and he tensed more as he shot into position, holding out the bloody rose. He soon relaxed when he recognized Sasuke coming toward him, but raised an eyebrow at the other perfect's disgruntled expression. Chairman-sama wants to see us in his office right away. Sasuke said, scowling. He turned and walked away. Sasuke seemed more off-put than usual, as he muttered, stupid idiot, almost getting himself killed. I could have sliced off his head. Not to mention that he appeared right when that woman came. Zero pursued him as he started walking with the other perfect to where the chairman's office was. So he hadn't been the only to feel that horror that had been floating in the air. If it was one thing that Zero had learned, there were no such things as coincidences, and he would have to start being more careful than normal. As they walked, both Zero and Sasuke noticed a head of dark hair headed in the same direction. They both knew that Canham paid the chairman a few visits from time to time, but yet it seemed a little suspicious for them to all be headed there at the same time. So that left one thing clear, something was up, and it was big enough to get the perfects and the pure blood involved. I'm glad that you all could make it. The words were spoken solemnly from a normally cheery headmaster. Unblinking eyes settled on the three other occupants in the room, and the tension in the room coiled like a snake getting ready to strike. The information that I'm about to tell you is of the utmost importance. You will keep this secret with everyone but, Chairman Cross looked at Canham, the vampire nobles. Canham nodded slightly and gestured for him to start again. He inclined gracefully on the chair he sat in. The new student will arrive tomorrow to start out in the night class. There was a question in the air, but the three kept quiet because they sensed something else that would be more shocking than that. After all, having a new student wasn't a huge deal. Another vampire, Zero thought, disgusted. As if they needed more bloodsuckers here. As if sensing what he was thinking, Chairman Cross sent him a warning glance that appeared more menacing than ever seen before. Zero scowled at him as Cross continued. But he isn't a regular vampire, the chairman's voice sounded weird, as if he were in a daze. He's a pure blood that comes from a family that was supposedly wiped out hundreds of years before we were even born. Actually, I'm pretty sure that there are still tales about their family. The family name was Namikaze. Zero and Sasuke were sitting upright in their chairs, one glaring at the window, while the other was staring at his clenched fists. The terse silence was broken by the politician of the group. "Really?" Kanem drawled out, both eyebrows rising slowly. "I have heard about that bloodline before. Hypothetically, it was said they not only had vampire blood, but shifter blood. Could that have been true?" Cross shifted in his seat with a frown. "We actually don't know if that's true or not, nor do we know how they got wiped out in the first place. All we do know is that the person who killed everyone else was from another line like the Kurans." "Mr. Cross," Kanem said, eyes narrowing slightly. The room temperature dropped slightly. None of the occupants moved uncomfortably though, as they were used to it. "I hope you don't think that the Kuran line would do something so despicable." No, of course not. But while I don't suspect it, we cannot rule anyone out." "Certainly," the pureblood said graciously, eyes relaxing into their normal expressionless gaze. "Please continue." "The Perfects, vampire nobles, and Kanem-sama will go and greet the new student at 7 in the evening. He is a little eccentric. You will probably have to find him somewhere besides the main gate. But don't treat him like royalty," Chairman Cross warned. "He hates that kind of thing." "Gee." Sasuke muttered as he shifted in his seat. His scowl threatened to split his face. As they got up to leave, the chairman called them back. "Oh, and his name is Uzumaki Naruto." The next day. Sparkling blue eyes traced outlines of the clouds in the sky as they passed overhead. As the passenger shook his head slightly, his sunshine-colored hair shifted in front of his gaze. He absent-mindedly brushed them aside as he rolled his eyes to look at the one driving the car. "Nana, is this school really worth going to, Otu-san?" he asked Iruka idly. "Of course, Naruto-kun. Not only that, but you'll be able to be around other vampires." Iruka looked at him through the rear-view mirror and smiled encouragingly at the blonde. Naruto grimaced and gave a reluctant short nod. Naruto sighed, his gaze moving from the sky to the father-like figure in front of him then back. Iruka had been very kind to him after finding him in the streets all those years ago, taking him in even though he and Naruto were different species. Iruka was a human who knew nothing about taking care of a vampire child, but he had nurtured Naruto all the same. Not only that, but he had gone through great lengths to keep them out of the eyes of the Vampire Council. Naruto's shoulders dropped in defeat. "Just remember, if they call me Naruto-sama, I won't be accountable for any damages done," he warned Iruka slightly before turning back to look at the sky. By the time they got to Cross Academy, the sun had already started to set. Everyone was either outside relaxing or taking some time to visit friends. Driving past all these students made Naruto feel slightly anxious. It wasn't like he was new with the whole moving thing, he just didn't like it. He would have to make friends all over again, just like all the other times. Not only that, but he would have to get used to the new school system and his new schedule. He wondered idly who the chairman of the school told Naruto's little secret to. "You can just stop anywhere," Naruto told Iruka as he put on his Ray-Ban sunglasses. The dark lenses glinted in the sun as he opened the door, vehicle still moving. Once the car stopped moving, he got out onto the sidewalk and waited for his guardian to come out as well. They still had to hide his bags before he went exploring. Zero walked around the academy with an edgy, stiff posture while looking for his perfect partner. It was time they had to find that other vampire, and he didn't like this one bit. His vampire senses were becoming stressed as he tried to analyze everything in his path. "Konnichiwa, perfect-san." A male voice chirped out, and Zero found himself looking at a beautiful youth who had blonde hair that substituted the sun and blue eyes pretty enough to be called Jules. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered how the youth had gotten past his awareness. Zero's hunter senses screamed vampire, and he instantly narrowed his gaze upon the student he had never seen before. He pulled his gun, the bloody rose, out and pointed it at the male teen. He didn't think of the possibilities. "Ma," the blonde TSK'd, giving him a disappointed look. "It's not nice to point guns at people." Zero noticed the choice of words and smirked. "But you're not exactly human, are you?" The guy smiled easily. "No, not exactly. You can say I'm vegetarian though." The smile became a full-blown grin, a cheeky one at that. "Really now?" Zero asked almost drolly, raising an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware a vampire could go vegetarian." "If they couldn't," the blonde said, a grin still plastered on his face, "then how come you're still alive? You're level D, after all. I wonder what's keeping you from eating someone." Zero's eyes narrowed dangerously, all dry amusement gone in a heartbeat. But before he could try and take a shot at the student with the bloody rose, telltale footsteps were heard. He watched as the student grinned at the new arrivals, and it was then that Zero noticed something lurking in that blue gaze. The type of heartbreaking emotion sealed up so it would take someone with amazing observation skills to see. He almost missed it. "Vampire?" Sasuke hissed out from gritted teeth. He stood inside the trees, shadowed. Zero could almost imagine a red film over the Uchiha's black eyes. Nice to meet you too, Naruto said sourly, sticking his tongue out childishly at the other perfect. It was then that Naruto turned his eyes from Sasuke that he noticed the other pure-blood vampire standing at the end of the clearing with vampire nobles surrounding him. Sky Blue met Rich Red Wine with a tingling awareness. They regarded each other with arched eyebrows. Naruto's smile brightened, the smile so big it made his eyes close. Naruto-san, Kanem said after a pause, smiling very slightly. Cross Academy welcomes you. Naruto was aware of the stares and whispers as he was led around for an official tour of the school he was going to attend. He ignored all the commotion, already used to it all from years of experience. Well, he actually had to admit that it got to him somewhat, but clearly not as much as the two perfects in front of him. Naruto could practically hear the thoughts forming in their heads, sadistic and dooming. He gave an internal grin at the thought of witnessing the show. He cast a sidelong glance to his left side, where his soon-to-be classmate was. Now there was a distraction from all the noise. The other pure blood right next to him was gorgeous with a pin-straight nose and an almost delicate jaw. Not to mention the high cheekbones and fullness, but everything was put to shame by Kanem's eyes. Almond-shaped rich red wine eyes were full of intelligence and a very well-hidden weariness that showed off a tragic past. The beautiful sorrow lurking in those eyes reminded Naruto painfully of himself. It was the same kind of sorrow he had to put up with every time he went to sleep and when he woke up. Naruto briefly wondered what had happened to him. Naruto gave an internal grimace as he shook off the thought. He was not here to get infatuated with another, much less the male pure blood. He'd have to avoid thinking like that in the future. The other saw Naruto looking and gave him a small smile. Do you like what you see, Naruto-san? This made Naruto blink and smile innocently, successfully covering up his embarrassment and blush. Of course, Kanem-sama. Who wouldn't like this school? Naruto looked around with awe. Though he had already seen it once, it hadn't been explained to him and he had been sort of confused, but he would never admit that out loud. Now that he understood how it all worked, it was like seeing the school for the first time. The Gothic architecture was amazing. A clock tower loomed over the entire school like a menace, but yet Naruto felt oddly protected. Spikes popped up on the edges of the school buildings, and Naruto felt as if he'd seen a stone statue somewhere. Around the school perimeter was a fence that looked a bit rusty, yet maintained a small charm. It was like finding home or something close to home, anyway. He ignored the small sadness that wanted to make itself known. It wasn't like he would be staying here for long anyway. After a few minutes, the perfects went out to patrol though they did send a few glares before leaving, and the vampire nobles had left to go get ready for classes. All that was left from their group was Kanem and himself. They walked inside of the empty hallways to the unused classrooms now. Kanem had explained quietly that there were certain places they were allowed to go to for security reasons, to which Naruto nodded accordingly. Since this was a school for both humans and vampires, it would only be logical to try and keep the weaker ones safe. He was shown to all of his would-be classes. He filed the pathways inside his head, memorizing everything he could. There were things called switch days. The only thing weird about this schedule was that there was homeroom before and after the other 3 classes on each day. He didn't know his schedule, but apparently he had a homeroom with Kanem. The little voice in his head murmured about how lucky he was to get to see Kanem at least twice a day. He promptly ignored it. His room was simple but elegant. The whole room was painted a dark red color. There was a large window, covered by thin and shady curtains for now, and a black window bench that would allow him to sit and read next to the window when he wanted. The queen-sized bed sat innocently at least 10 meters away from the window, the frame holding a heavy drape and mosquito net that flowed around the bed. There was a small table next to the bed, accompanied by a black chair. On the opposite side of the room, a very dark orange couch sat directly in front of the door. Then there was a door 5 meters away from the front door that led to both his modernized bathroom and closet. Yes, it was a very big room. Naruto lay in bed an hour later after the tour thinking about what was going to happen the next day. He had already gotten his uniform and all of that, and now all he had to do was wait until it was time for the night class to go. But for some reason, the blonde vampire couldn't find any sleep. It was as if his skin were jumpy, like electricity was flowing through his veins. He remembered having felt the same feeling a long time ago when that horrifying night had occurred. Something was going to happen soon, and it certainly wasn't a good thing that was going to happen. When the time came, he could only hope that the others would be ready for it, because he knew he would be. He got up from bed and decided to wander the night dorms. Hopefully he could calm his restless nerves with a very short walk. It wasn't like he could go outside with it about 100 degrees outside, with the sun shining down fully and mercilessly. Though he could shield himself with other means, he didn't feel like carrying an umbrella like that, because that would just look plain weird. The night class dorms were quiet when he slipped out of his room. Light shone through the windows, filtered slightly to ease the painful brightness. There were windows here and there that were closed, but it was probably more for privacy than anything else, Naruto mused. He glanced down at the living room and wrinkled his nose slightly at how bright it was. Couldn't sleep. A soft voice drifted from behind and he turned quickly, wondering how the person had gotten behind him without alerting him. Normally Naruto would be on top of everything, and no one had ever been able to sneak up on him like that. The light revealed a beautiful girl with silky pink hair, as unusual as it was. Naruto stared at it curiously before looking the other over with a glance. She was wearing a nightgown modestly, and her short hair barely grazed her shoulders. She had green eyes, and they sparkled like the prettiest emerald gem out there. Pink hair and green eyes. Naruto found that he just couldn't wrap his head around the weird image. He grinned at the girl. No such luck for you either, huh? I just have to get used to everything, what's your excuse? The girl snorted almost delicately, but there was something shady in her deep green eyes. It's personal matter. She put out a hand. Hi, I'm Sakura. Haruno Sakura. Uzumaki Naruto. He said, smiling brightly while pumping the hand enthusiastically. So Sakura, do you like ramen? He glared at her accusingly. She blinked before hesitantly saying sure, which was followed by a beam from Naruto. He started to prance down the other hallway and Sakura seemed to be humoring him as she followed behind. It's the greatest thing ever created. He exclaimed, walking down the hall with his newfound friend. Sakura shook her head in amusement. If you say so, she said, a smile will quirk her dot. Naruto tugged at his new white uniform with a pout. It felt constricting like a snake with a struggling mouse. It just kind of squeezed until the mouse's eyes popped out and died. Too bad he couldn't die anymore, after all, he was one of the undead. Naruto-san, came a silky voice, sending tremors down his back slightly. Damn. He resisted the urge to rub at the goosebumps forming on his arms. This was ridiculous. Goosebumps in hot weather and under a uniform. Naruto looked up from his uniform, tugging to peek at the amused-looking Kanem. Tugging at it won't make it any less uncomfortable. Well, I know that. Haha, I was just inspecting it to make sure it was up to my awesomeness. Naruto provided, scratching the back of his head impishly. He gave a sheepish smile. Right, Adol, her idol, said sarcastically, glaring at him slightly. He was still protective of Kanem, and he wasn't used to having another pure blood around. When Kanem had told him about this, Naruto Adol had been shocked, to say the least. His whole life he had been told that there were no more pure bloods like Kanem, who came from a prestigious line. Then this new pure blood came waltzing in with the Namikaze name. Oh yes, he knew all about the history of the Namikaze line. The Namikaze and current clans had been allies, and some could say that they had been friends. Each family was always at the other's social gatherings, bringing young ones and others. And when the two lines had a fight, it seemed like it brought them closer to each other, more than ever before. With both of them at the top of the vampire pyramid, everything had been peaceful. It was until that day that everything had changed. Naruto frowned at the other blonde vampire, feeling a little annoyed. He didn't notice the little harem he did, or how he pouted. He didn't notice the other pure-blood vampire watching him like a hawk, either. Heh, it was just too bad for him. He would have been surprised with all the emotions running in that oddly bare gaze. Naruto's attention was stolen, however, when the gates to the walkway started opening. He allowed himself to end in anticipation, grinning madly like a Cheshire cat. Man, was this going to be fun. After all, it was time to woo the speculators. Zero shifted his gaze to the new student. He didn't know why, but the other pure blood was making him slightly nervous. He could almost feel the power rolling off of him like Kanem, but when he looked at the other vampires, they seemed to not feel it. He shrugged. Maybe it was just him. Zero watched as Naruto grinned almost shyly at the girls, causing some to swoon. He held back a smirk. No doubt the hyperactive blonde was enjoying himself. Zero knew that, just after one day with the sunny vampire, Naruto was anything but shy. In fact, he was the brashest and the most big-headed person he had ever met. His gaze traveled from Naruto to Sasuke, and his eyes narrowed. The anger the younger perfect was emitting was almost evident in the air, which was practically impossible. Unless you were a vampire, of course, and Sasuke just didn't seem to be one. Zero also knew that if Sasuke had any chance of being a vampire, he would have been scented out a long time ago. If not by him, then by the other bloodsuckers. I already know all of this fucking stuff. Shit. Shit. Naruto thought in his head, just waiting for the perfect chance to start pulling his hair out. It was frustrating, listening to an old geezer talk about crap Naruto had been forced to learn a long time ago. History about vampires, and it was just enough history to drive the sanest person to insanity in 2 minutes flat. Oh, and did Naruto mention? He's been here for fucking 2 hours listening to this nonsense. The first war between the hunters and vampires happened when the blonde resisted banging his head on the desk. Naruto looked at Kanem with slightly desperate eyes, and said eyes twitched when he caught the vague amusement in those oh so lovely eyes. Naruto silently grumbled, at least someone is getting entertainment out of this torture, and could have sworn that he saw Kanem's move into a slight smile until his face returned into a polite expression once again. Wait. Kanem didn't just read his mind, did he? He scowled. What the fuck, damn it all to hell and back, he thought darkly, holding back a body twitch. You knew you were in trouble when it wasn't your eye, but your body that wanted to twitch. Naruto sagged in his seat, no longer bothering to listen to the teacher. Oh god, he thought, why must you cause me so much agony? I mean, I know I'm all crap and not planned for, but why me? Half an hour later he ended up toying with a beautiful multicolored chain that was wrapped around his wrist. He did it absently, without really noticing, and soon the droning of the teacher's voice became something like elevator music, only more annoying. His gaze became more distant as he stared at the spot above the teacher's bald head, seeing something that was only in his mind. She smiled as they spun around in circles. The field was beautiful at night, and the flowers flew up as they danced in the moonlight. You'll always remember me, right? He nodded his head vigorously. Naru-chan. She said, giving him a teasingly stern look. Don't ever forget us, okay? Kanem studied the smaller vampire with keen eyes. It was just then that he realized he actually wanted to know what was going on in the other's head to make him have that dull look. Just a few hours ago, the blonde had been jittery in his seat, full of energy waiting to be unleashed. Now Naruto was sitting in his seat, blending in with the stillness of the others, not even breathing. Just what type of past did Uzumaki Naruto have? That was when the bell rang. It echoed through the school facility, but the sound didn't go close to the day class dorms. The doors opened to allow the pretty vampires to walk through the halls, and most moved out of the way for the dorm president as he stepped out of the classroom with Naruto by his side. Some could have sworn that they saw a small up-tilt on their princes as he listened to the chatter of the energetic blonde who was practically lighting up the halls with his sunny expression. Sasuke scowled at the new vampire from his position outside the glass windows. What vampire did that? The moon was up high and everything finally seemed peaceful. But outside the safe gates of the school a shadow darted out. It flashed through the streets of the city like a shadow, unable to be detected. Red eyes sparkled in the darkness, and the figure suddenly leapt at an innocent, dragging her into the darkness of the ally it had been dwelling in. Teeth clamped down on delicate skin harshly and the body in its grasp jerked, but before she could scream a hand covered her mouth. Soon, the victim was paralyzed with pain. A smile formed from the thing's mouth around the skin and blood. The hands let go and dropped the cooling body on the ground before flashing through the city once more. And suddenly those red eyes closed. Naruto woke up and stretched his lanky but toned form. He arched slightly on the bed, making his back crack while his arms and legs extended. One small pop could be heard, and he made a sound of contentment as he relaxed on his bed. His blue eyes opened to look at the ceiling disinterestedly as he thought about what was to come. He would need to make a few dates and tell the others about what they were going to do next. Naruto had to get this out of the way so he could leave for the next hunt. He looked over to the door as he heard faint sounds of doors opening and closing. Just then he realized something. On a small calendar attached to the wall read a date, April the 2nd. The same day his parents had been murdered. Naruto was having a bad day. That's all there was to it. Everything had been going badly since he had woken up to realize the fact that it was the anniversary to his parents' deaths. Ah yes, old Karma over yonder probably hated his guts and had decided to make his day a living hell. Naruto wondered what he had done to get so unlucky. First thing to make his day crappy. Well, obviously the fact that it was the same day that his parents died. Fuck, Naruto chanted over and over in his head as he rushed out of the dorms. He pulled at his tie, hoping that it was in the center and not looking like a piece of bad art. He gave a short wave to the gatekeeper for the night dorms while he ran over to the entrance. He stopped short, however, when he saw all the girls giving him the eye. Damn it, he thought. Naruto looked around wildly and saw Sasuke by the tree, keeping a watchful eye on the girls. He took a step closer to the rabid-looking girls and when they didn't make a move, deemed it possible to venture out. But it seemed like that Uchiha kid didn't feel helpful today and gave a dangerous smirk as the girls attacked him. Naruto-san. Please, let me take a picture of you. A girl gushes as she pulls at his sleeve. He gave her puppy dog eyes and said, maybe later. The girl nodded, clearly in a daze. Can I have your phone number, Naruto-kun? Another girl on the other side said. She bounced up and down on the balls of her feet and her hand gripped the arm of his uniform sharply. He held back a wince when he heard a slight tearing in the jacket. Damn his terrible beauty for making him put up with this. Me too. Squealed another. I'm sorry, ladies, he said, sticking his bottom lip out. I'm so horribly late and I can't spend any more time talking to you. It seemed like that was both the wrong thing and the right thing to say. The ones who had been watching from afar nodded in understanding and started to leave. The ones who were more persistent than the others started to squawk about how they shouldn't punish him and grabbed at his jacket to try and cuddle with him. He didn't try to hold back a grimace as he unsuccessfully went to rid himself of those appendages. It's time to bring out the big guns, he thought, and his pretty blue eyes narrowed in determination. He turned to them, eyes flashing red for but a second, and opened his teeth. Didn't I say to leave him alone? Someone interrupted coldly. Naruto blinked, a little miffed that he couldn't do the ultimate begging smile on them, but then beamed at the other perfect. Zero. His inner child jumped in glee. The blonde gave him a look that said help me, please. Before switching his gaze to the still smirking Sasuke. He gave a mean glare. Damned ouch. I hate you too. The girl slowly wilted under Zero's glare and soon scampered off. Thank you. Naruto chirped. Zero started shortly, coldly, and walked away. The blonde blinked and pouted before running to the school. Arg, what the hell was he supposed to tell the teacher about his appearance? Second reason. He had overslept. Yup, such an easy reason shouldn't really bum anyone out, right? But what really bothered him was that he had to go through a crowd of rabid fangirls who had stayed to wait for him to come out. Not to mention that the freaking Uchiha he shook in anger at the mention of the name did not do anything to hold them back, which resulted in one late Uzumaki Naruto coming into class with slightly ripped clothing. Third reason. Kanem had been ignoring him since the start of first period, which was just plain weird because Naruto knew that he didn't do anything for the other pure blood to go cold on him. He glanced worriedly at Kanem from the corner of his eyes again. When nothing looked wrong he sighed quietly and looked to where Uchiha was sitting. He stared for a second to get the vampire's attention. His leg tapped impatiently from under the desk, though he did try and keep it at a minimum. He was aware of the other vampires giving him glares. Everyone's a critic these days, Naruto sighed. As soon as Uchiha raised an eyebrow inquisitively at him, Naruto frowned and slightly dropped his head to the left, subtly pointing to Kanem. Uchiha frowned slightly, peering at his leader before looking back at Naruto to shrug. Naruto fingered a hole in his jacket and nibbled on his lip in concentration. Then he huffed silently, scowling from the absolutely wonderful help. He imagined taking a chomp out of Uchiha's ear just for kicks. Crossing his arms, he ignored the instructor in front of the class and looked out of the window to the dark snow-covered earth. It was like a winter wonderland outside, and it made Naruto itch to try and get out of class to have some fun. I mean, seriously, he thought, sticking his bottom lip out slightly, the perfectly covered land is just asking to get ruined. He caught a glimpse of something white moving at a quick pace before it disappeared from his sight. He gave a curious glance, his eyes tracing the trees quickly as he tried to track the fast-moving object. He frowned in suspicion when he was unable to locate it again. It was preposterous, something was able to get from his vision. His skin tingled with anticipation and his fingers itched, and Naruto automatically knew that something was happening. He looked around the classroom, but they either didn't notice or they didn't care. Was this the person they had been looking for? After all, there was no way an animal could go that fast. Naruto tried to shake that assumption from his head. But then he decided to go and check it out just in case. He narrowed his eyes and was gone before anyone but the other pure blood noticed. The mild snow blew past the blonde when he got outside. His golden locks swirled around him and he smiled peacefully as he fully embraced the snow and wind. Oh, how he loved winter. It was when his two out of his three elements mingled with each other. Wind and ice, or in this case, wind and snow. Even since he had been a child, he knew that they would be his chosen elements. Though it's shocking to find a vampire with even one, he had a few. Two of them would be his chosen elements. The other powers seemed to fall into the category of pure blood. He let the wind close in on him, go through him and around him, and before he knew it, he was floating. He levitated in the air peacefully, before shooting up into the sky with a flash of his white teeth. He stayed above the trees, looking down curiously at the trees as the wind and snow twirled around him. He sighed before closing his eyes, pushing wind down and around him, searching. Everything became still except for the movement of nature. He already knew where the perfects were and had taken into consideration which sections to fully focus on. If he couldn't find a disturbance in those areas, he would have to search where the perfects were. Long lashes fluttered against a somewhat tan cheek as the blonde frowned in concentration. He held out his hands, palms facing upward, as he tipped his head backwards. He breathed in deeply and listened. He waited for a sign from the wind and the snow. He lost himself in the white, and whenever something flashed black, well, it would be time to hunt then, wouldn't it? Menacing blue eyes snapped open and he smiled as he bared his teeth. Blonde hair swirled around him once more, but seemed more threatening as he dropped from the sky and dashed through the thick undergrowth that surrounded the academy. A dangerous smile curled his as he gained on something 60 yards ahead of him. The hunt was on. Gurren Kanem stood close to the window looking out, looking for some clue as to where the blonde pure blood had gone. His cool gaze scanned through the thick foliage outside covered in snow, pupils dilating to reach far distances that would have been impossible to see with human sight. His thoughts, however, were full of questions as to why he was so worried in the first place. When he had realized this morning that something had been changing towards the blonde, he knew that he had to do something quickly about it. Though it pained him, Kanem knew that something had to be done, and so as he thought more on what was happening, he ignored the existence called Uzumaki Naruto. He wondered why he was feeling anything after friendship with Naruto, since they had only just met. He had been aware of the concern that emitted out of the blonde through the first half of class, but had decided to ignore it. A pang of something flashed through his. Kanem let a small frown cross his face. But when Naruto had disappeared to go outside, there was this constriction or something that made him hold his breath for but a second. He knew that his concern was something idiotic. Though he didn't know what kinds of powers Naruto had, it was a sure thing that he had to have some because of his pure blood heritage. Not only that, but elemental powers could have been tossed at Naruto, making him someone to be fully reckoned with. If something bad was happening at this very moment, Naruto should be able to deal with it fairly easily. Kanem narrowed his eyes when he felt the wind shift magically. Being a wind user himself, he knew when something was happening outside to cause an almost unnatural breeze. And yet, even as he searched, the wind didn't seem to carry unease with it as it had a few days ago. It seemed to go happily as it was guided. Was that who he thought it was? Most suspicious indeed, Kanem thought as his rich wine eyes looked stonily outside. Suddenly the person stopped, giving the blonde a chance to catch up. When he did, he just couldn't believe his eyes. Naruto stopped in shock, staring at the person in front of him. His ice blue eyes, which were now fading to their regular sky blue, took in the white clothes and features on the face as he opened his mouth to talk. "Who the hell are you?" The person smiled, giving him a flash of fang. "Thank you for coming. Uzumaki Naruto, you just fell into my trap." Kanem was jolted out of his thoughts when a shock of pure energy shuddered through him. His back went rigid even as his eyes narrowed dangerously. He calmly turned around to address the circle around him. He took in the suspicious features of the noble vampires with a sweep of his eyes before looking up to where he knew his unofficial bodyguard was. He wondered if that person was gone because of sickness or if that jolt of energy was theirs. "Saren, please check and make sure about what's happening. We might have a little problem with cleaning up soon." She appeared out of nowhere and gave a bow. "Yes, Kanem-sama." And she disappeared again. The moon was high in the dark sky. A dangerous smile erupted before disappearing, leaving a cold and beautiful face. Snow was blown away. Wind flared. Blonde hair blew back slightly as the person watched the other blonde struggle inside of the electrical cage that had been hiding in the snow. A needle glinted from the ground a few meters away and a mysterious liquid oozed out of it slowly. Naruto breathed heavily and glared at the female figure in front of him. "What the hell?" he wheezed out. He took in the dirty blonde hair that went down to the middle of her back, those pretty features of a vampire, the big brown eyes, and the almost invisible smirk on her. There was a dignified air around her. He hated the brown-eyed vampire on sight. "The fuck? That's too bad for you," she told him smugly, though her face was expressionless. "That needle contained a powerful potion in it that enables vampires, including pure bloods, to lose their powers temporarily. You're hopeless in that cage, Naruto." His glare increased. "That's Uzumaki-sama to you," he snapped, throwing daggers from his eyes. "You don't deserve to say my first name." He was on his hands and knees as he panted. Everything felt restricting, like it was squeezing the life out of him. "I never caught yours," he got out. "Oh?" she asked, raising an eyebrow, all amusement gone from her face replaced with cold deliberation. "Where have my manners gone? My name is Ruka Sound, noble vampire and loyal follower of Kanem-sama." She mock curtsied in front of him, her gaze showing an underlying challenge. Naruto narrowed his eyes on the vampire. "Loyal follower of Kanem-sama. Why aren't you with him right now?" He tried to keep her busy as his body started to heal itself, pushing the unwanted toxin out of his body using his pores. Sweat barely glistened on his skin, making it look like he glowed in the moonlight. The wind swayed again. He blinked slowly as it caressed his face and contained a smirk as he looked out of the corner of his eye to the thick vegetation nearby. "I can't forgive you," she told him coldly. "Stop pretending around him and stay away from him. Kanem-sama doesn't need to be around imposters." Naruto let his blonde bangs shadow his eyes as he queried a dangerous grin. "Oh? So you think I'm faking being pure blood? I know you are." There was an absolute certainty in her voice. He let out a chuckle, a low, rumbling chuckle that showed his full amusement. If only, if only. For a moment he wished that the certainty was right. If his family hadn't been pure bloods, then nothing would have happened to them. As it was, because of that power in their blood, it couldn't have been helped. He had been parentless as a result, until Iruka came, of course. He watched with sharp eyes as she narrowed those browns at him. Why do you laugh? He asked another question to her, do you really think that this potion will keep my powers locked up? He leaned back with leisure. Oh well, it doesn't really matter. He continued to chuckle, leaning his head to the side to show his face through his bangs. He closed his eyes and swayed a little, a smile still playing over him. He could feel his powers returning, but knew that he didn't have to do anything. After all, there was another vampire behind the bushes a few yards away watching and waiting to take Ruka down. Anyway, Naruto didn't really like showing off his powers. It made him feel dangerous, and that was a feeling he didn't like. Exercising his pure blood powers made him feel slightly uncomfortable, so he only used his regular vampire ones when needed. There was a blast of power as the other vampire surged out of the bushes. Naruto watched, his eyes trying to adjust to the speed at which the vampire moved. Thanks to that pure bloodline in him, his eyes were better than other vampires, and so he kept up with the figure. He was shocked to find that it was another female. Ruka turned too late, and as she was bashed on the head, she gave Naruto a faint glare before dropping cold. Her head wound allowed blood to spill onto the snow-packed ground. Naruto grimaced as his inner monster started thrashing in its cage. He reined it in with a practiced shake of his head, looking over the disappearing cage to stare at the girl. She had long brown hair that sparkled in the soft white light, along with big doe eyes the same color of her hair. A delicate beauty that hid its thorns, Naruto decided. He grinned at her, hi. She gave him a startled look before smiling shyly at him. He continued, thanks for helping me back there. No, she said hastily, it's my job to help Ani-chan's friends. Naruto blinked at the word. Ani-chan? He questioned, Kaname-sama is your brother? Hi, she answered, smiling, let me introduce myself. My name is Kuranyuki. Oh ho, Naruto chuckled, flashing out a hand, Uzumaki Naruto. He said with a flourish, making the young girl smile. They shook hands and Naruto stood up, bowing like a gentleman in front of her. She blushed and he grinned. So you believe that I'm pure blood? He asked her, leaning on one leg and slouching to come off as non-threatening. She nodded. His smile deepened. Thanks, miss. No one seems to believe that fact except for Kaname-sama. Well, it is pretty unbelievable for another pure blood to just pop out like that, she muttered, then blushed at the almost rude-sounding comment. He laughed it off. True, he said, then thought of something, hey, does that mean you're a pure blood too? Well, wait. Don't answer that question, it's stupid. Yuki gave him a slightly amused glance. Yes, I am pure blood, though my powers seem to be more limited than Ani-chan's. Naruto thought of something else. Hey, does that mean you know some of Kaname-sama's dirty secrets? He asked excitedly, blue eyes flashing mischievously. You can tell me, you know. It's all in the name of joking. Yuki got a thoughtful look on her face. A fresh wave of blood wafted toward the night class as they started back to their dorms. Kaname expressionlessly looked toward the moon, a sliver of disappointment showing in his eyes. He ignored the other night class as they started to murmur about Ruka's scent. The Kairo, he whispered inaudibly as his eyes turned red subtly. Zero paused as the scent of freshly spilt blood reached his nose. He cocked his head, turning toward a general direction before seeing something flash between the trees, dark but recognizable. Zero decided to not deal with the bloodsuckers since Sasuke was heading over already. Though Sasuke was human, he was very powerful with his sword. Zero knew he wouldn't be needed. Sasuke loped through the dense trees, feet skimming the snow-covered ground silently. The wind flashed through his hair, whipping a few dark strands in his eyes. Those obsidian rocks glittered dimly as the owner made its way to the source of the smell. He arrived at the scene, hand automatically moving toward his pocket where his sword rested. Yes, it was practically impossible for a sword to fit in there, but it grew in size when he unsheathed it. The small sword was very handy for times when he had to walk around with it in his pocket, which was every day. He gave a glance at the picture in front of him. There was that blonde pure blood scum, along with another female vampire Sasuke wasn't familiar with. Another blonde vampire lay on the ground unconscious, a large wound on her head. Blood was melting the snow below, turning the snow into a crimson stain. He made his presence known by shuffling into the small area, sword hidden in one hand. Ah, perfect San, Naruto grinned, nice of you to finally join us. I would like to know where you've been for the past hour. His teasing scold riled Sasuke up, but he took a practiced breath to exhale the myth. I don't need to explain anything to you, Sasuke grunted, walking up to them with carefully blank eyes. I could have gotten killed if not for Yuki-sama here, Naruto whined, ignoring the gleam in Sasuke's eyes. The obsidian-eyed boy filed away the fact that Naruto called her Yuki-sama in his head for future reference. Damn, so close, Sasuke muttered slowly, allowing Naruto and Yuki to hear. Naruto pouted. That's not nice. I don't care, the Uchiha said curtly, bending down to look at the other vampire on the ground. He kept his back studiously away from the other vampires, eyeing the wound with displeasure. The amount of blood here was enough to draw out all of the vampires, but he didn't hear any coming. Kanem must have ordered them to keep still, Sasuke deducted. The wound is barely closing, and she's still unconscious. I don't get it. She was hit by an anti-vampire weapon, and the girl beside Naruto spoke up. Sasuke looked up sharply, glaring at her. She shrunk back slightly in surprise before standing straighter. And how, pray tell, was she hit by an anti-vampire weapon when there are only 2 vampires here? Yuki hesitated. I can hold one anti-vampire weapon because of my previous human years. It doesn't rebel with me. Sasuke put that piece of information in his head too. He hissed, you have an anti-vampire weapon. Naruto interrupted them by stepping slightly in front of Yuki, eyes narrowing and turning slightly ice blue. Do you have a problem with that? He asked calmly. Sasuke glared at him as the wind picked up. I wasn't asking you, he snapped, standing up. He gave them a glare before dragging the limp vampire to a tree, dropping her shoulders near a tree to shield from the incoming dawn. Headmaster Cross wouldn't be pleased if the stupid bloodsucker got more than burns tomorrow. He hoped she died of blood loss. Naruto and Yuki watched as he walked away in silence. Have you been here for a while? He asked her, turning to face her. Kind of, she replied, blinking at the abrupt vanish of the perfect. Naruto nodded and asked, have you met both perfects? Yes. She answered, confused now. She turned toward Naruto with a curious look. Naruto nodded again and asked in a bland voice, did you notice that they both have ice sticks up their ass? Yuki blinked, blushing as she looked down. Ah, Naruto said, translating the movement, the tone still bland. So you did notice it? Good, then I wasn't the only one. Yuki giggled slightly. Naruto looked at the night sky, gaze pensive. Classes should have been over for quite a while, he thought, noting the lighter sky. Which means I've been harassing my attacker and talking with Yuki for a while. Naruto nodded and turned toward Yuki, a smile on his face. Let's go back to the dorms. It should be daylight soon. Oh. She said, an embarrassed smile crossing her face. I would love to, but I have to go somewhere else now. Naruto-san, please don't tell anyone else that I was here. His eyes sharpened at the words as he smiled. Sure thing, Yuki-sama. I hope you get there safely. They bid goodbyes, and Naruto looked up again. He frowned as he smelt a faint metallic scent in the air. It's been a day, he murmured. I'll contact them soon enough. He turned back to start his trek to the night dorms. Sure you can, Naruto-kun. Naruto blinked at the hyper words, deciding to give a smile, albeit an uncomfortable one, to Chairman Cross, who was behind his desk bouncing up and down like a little kid. The headmaster didn't seem to notice it, but then he stopped suddenly and gave Naruto a sly smile. But you have to bring Kanem-kun along with you. Naruto didn't know what to say to that. He ignored the heat of the blush that rose on his cheeks as he pretended not to see the sly smile. Suspicious, his mind cried out. He agreed anyway. Sure pause. Hey, wait a minute. Are you implying that I can't protect myself? The blonde thought he was allowed to be self-righteous as those words echoed in his mind. That Chairman Naruto was not weak. He was pure blood, damn it. His heart called for justice. Chairman Cross just gave him an unreadable smile and happily said, no. I just want Kanem-kun with you. Which was very weird. Naruto gave the man a look, raising one eyebrow and rolling his eyes. Whatever. The headmaster seemed to be appeased with his response. Good. The chairman clapped, smiling joyously. He skipped out from his desk and pounced on the unsuspecting Naruto, giving the blonde his infamous glumps from hell. Naruto's eyes bugged out for a minute the hell, and he opened his mouth like a gaping fish, turning blue. His hands flapped spastically at his sides and before finally pushing the clingy headmaster away. Cross allowed a small space between them, grinning his kitty grin, his arms still around Naruto. The blonde glared at him. I rather like my personal space, he thought, miffed. Dude, get off of me. He shouted at the headmaster. Cross's lower lip trembled like a child and he started crying. Naruto looked at him, exasperated. He pushed the still clutching chairman off of him and stalked away, ignoring the "Why am I alone?" wail from his opposite direction. Gee, what a weirdo. This was certainly not his problem. Naruto strode into the classroom, taking his seat in the 4th row as he waited impatiently for the rest of the students and the teacher to arrive. Sakura took the seat behind him, making him turn around, and he grinned at her. Yo. He said cheerfully, making the pink-haired girl chuckle. Hello, Naruto-sama. Nice night, huh? The pleasant words made the blonde feel almost uncomfortable. Was that what he was feeling? He pushed them off to the back of his head. Hey. Naruto frowned at her. Didn't I tell you to call me Naruto? He gazed out the window with a smile. All of the stars are shining so brilliantly tonight. He felt quite poetic tonight. Who cared about sap? Bring on the cheese. Sakura gave her friend a smile. Yes, the stars are wonderful on these types of nights. And how about I call you Yuzu-chan? I don't really like your name. Naruto gaped at her as she laughed at his expression. That's so mean, Sakura-chan. What did I do to deserve that? He allowed a drop of a wine to cross into the words. They were interrupted by a cold, malicious voice. Stop being so loud, you idiot. Naruto turned to glare at the interrupter. Didn't your mother ever tell you that interrupting a conversation is rude? Vampires these days. HMPH. The dole gave him a crossed look as he passed by, Kanem next to him. Kanem gave him a brief look that included a raised eyebrow, damn it, which meant Kanem was still half ignoring him, before going to stand by the window like usual. Naruto scowled at both of them before seeing another girl come in almost shyly. He waved her over excitedly. A few other vampires looked at him strangely, but he ignored them, grinning at the other pure blood. Hinata-chan. Yo. He patted the seat next to him when she got there. How are you? The girl gave him a very kind smile as she sat beside him. Nothing much. How about you, Naruto-kun? He gave her a big smile. Just wondering about the asshole in this class, he said cheerfully. He ignored the "why you little" from behind him and the giggles that came from Sakura. He unfortunately didn't see the brief smirk that fell upon the other purebloods, the one standing by the window before it disappeared. This was when he remembered something. Oh. He said suddenly, turning toward Kanem. Kanem-sama, I know that you're trying to ignore me and all, but you're coming with me to the outside world, K. The dole gave him a constipated look. Stop talking like that to Kanem-sama. Naruto and Kanem ignored him, gazing at each other intently. And why are you going out there in the first place, Naruto-san? Kanem asked him, giving him the raised eyebrow again. Because I want to. Naruto said childishly, trying to not show that he was hiding a secret. He pouted when Sakura whispered idiot behind him. Kanem seemed to consider this, watching him with cool eyes. Naruto falsely squirmed in his seat, giving his own version of a peeved, stubborn look to the other pureblood. Finally, Kanem cocked his head and nodded to show his agreement. Cool. Naruto replied, noticing that Kanem had already gone back to ignoring him. His heart stuttered erratically for a second before he frowned. Shit, going to town with Kanem was going to be a bucket load of fun. I wish I had heart problems, Naruto sighed to himself. 1. Naruto wandered around outside as the other night class students started going back to their dorms. He was bored, to put it bluntly. The blonde would have been walking with the rest of his classmates, but Adol hadn't responded to any of his baits, which made it lusterless to stick around. Maybe he should have told them that when he was bored, things started happening. It wasn't like there was anyone else to bother in that big cluster of vamps. Kanem was cold. Akatsuki was the one who was able to put up with Adol the most, which meant he was practically infallible of attempts to annoy. Ichigo was too nice to Naruto. There wasn't any way that Naruto would even attempt to ruin that. Hinata and Sakura just stared at him when he started talking to them. All the other vampires were just blah. They were just vampires. He sighed, lifting his blue gaze up to the nighttime sky. Maybe it was time to call Gaara. That redeemed friend of his always listened to what he had to say, but at the same time it felt like he was talking to a blank wall. Damn it. Why in the world was there absolutely nothing to do? The rustle in the bushes brought him out of his muses, and he lifted a golden eyebrow at the sight of a ruffled and scowling Uchiha. The hell was he doing here? Head back to the night dorms. Sasuke said, glaring daggers at the blonde. Naruto pouted at him. But no one wants to talk to me. He said, his lower lip trembling. Sasuke snorted out something that suspiciously sounded like who would want to talk to you, dope. But Naruto had already turned back to the still darkened sky. He frowned thoughtfully up at the fading stars. You know, he said conversationally to the disturbed-looking perfect. I have this strange feeling like something bad is going to happen. He looked back at the Uchiha, who now lost his scowl and was raising an eyebrow. He shrugged his shoulders at the unasked question in the perfect's black eyes. I don't know why. It's just this nagging feeling in the back of my head. HN. Naruto scowled, wheeling around to face the other. His left hip jutted out in defiance as he put a hand on it, glaring. Why do you always say that? He ranted. Do you not know how annoying that is? Ouch, Sasuke scoffed. As if you can tell me what's annoying and what isn't. Naruto turned red, and his body participated by doing a full body twitch. You son of a. They were interrupted when Naruto's cell phone started to vibrate. The blonde cocked his head to the side and blinked, quickly forgetting their argument as he rummaged in his pockets to find it. He looked at the screen and grinned, flipping it open. Ah, just the person he was about to call. Gaara. How are you, my best friend Hole? Naruto, something's happened again, came the short response. The pure blood stiffened slightly, cocking his head as his eyes darted to the perfect looking at him then back to the sky. He was all too aware of those black eyes taking in any changes in his body language. Oh? He said, grinning and allowing his body to relax again. I'm fine. How are you? There was a small silence between them. Naruto knew Gaara had caught on that he wasn't alone. Trying to clean up a big mess, Gaara finally said. There have been 2 murders that were exactly like the others. Naruto said. Well, lucky for you, he paused for dramatic effect. I'm going to the town tomorrow night, so let's meet and greet, K. The blonde vampire watched Sasuke become rigid and scowl from the corner of his eyes. Oh, and I'm bringing along another pure blood. I'll brief you on the details when I see you. Okay. Naruto said cheerfully. Bye, my little fledgling. HN. Then Gaara hung up. Naruto kept his face cheerful as he pocketed his cell and looked at the bastard. He grinned at the seething face. That Sasuke bastard looked funny when he was pissed. Since when were you allowed to go out? Sasuke said, his glare firmly back in place. He's such a drama queen, Naruto's mind thought exasperatedly. Since your hair became a duck's ass. Naruto said, dancing away as he laughed. Sasuke was going to run after him when Naruto appeared behind Sasuke to pluck a black hair painfully from the perfect. Naruto sniggered all the way to the night dorms, the perfect chomping on his heels. Poor Sasuke never even realized that Naruto had done that so he wouldn't get too suspicious, or did he? Harem casually watched the other pure blood out of the corner of his eyes. Naruto was an enigma, that was for sure. Harem knew that Naruto was hiding a lot of things behind that cheerful mask. He knew that one of them had to be about his own past, but what were the others? Naruto was a strange one. Harem couldn't read him, and he always made unpredictable moves. He was too blunt and said stuff with pure honesty. Honestly, what vampire did that nowadays? Everything was a play in the shadows for most, a dash of revenge here, a play of deceit here. It didn't click in Harem's mind. Not to mention the fact that the other pure blood made him feel alive for the first time in years. He was the only one, besides Adol, to make Harem smile. These fuzzy feelings in Harem were quite disconcerting, to be truthful. It was strange when he had heard that Naruto wanted to bring him along to the town. His mind had raced with 1,000 possibilities on what was going to happen to make Naruto bring him along. Was it a trap? Harem didn't get that feeling of unease from the blonde, and even if Naruto tried to kidnap him, it wouldn't work. He was too experienced with his powers, and his mind too cunning to allow him that act. But if it wasn't to trap him, what would the reason for going along be? Currently, they are getting ready to go out into the town. And that bothered Harem more than he let on because, well, he knew that something bad was going to happen. He could taste blood in the back of his throat. He wondered what type of sign that was. He let his eyes narrow. Naruto bounced on the balls of his feet, impatiently waiting for the other pure blood to come down from his special haven. Today they were going out on the town. Naruto was so excited that he could hardly keep still. It felt like ages since he was last outside of the school. Yeah, Naruto wasn't good with caged areas. They made him feel cornered. Of course, his fears weren't irrational, considering his past. But there was a reason for going out. You see, Naruto kept this little secret from everyone, but he was a police officer, to put it simply. Well, more like the chief of police than anything else, but still a police officer. The only thing different about his branch was that he worked directly under a secret vampire human government and took cases on vampire murders. Well, either vampire murders or murders made by supposed vampires. Of course, if the murder was made by a level E, they stepped back into the shadows and let the noble vampires take care of it. If the case didn't seem to be important enough, they normally just let life run its course. After all, there was only a 1% chance that life didn't just take care of everything. And if that 1% came true, normally the other organizations were there, so it didn't matter much. Their work was much harder than that, though. The cases they took on were slaughters done by other vampires. It was hard to plan things according to their enemy, not to mention the field work. Naruto shuddered at the thought. At those times, Naruto was most glad that he was a vampire. All those scars on his skin wouldn't look good for his complexion. He was too handsome to be scarred for life. Nobody except high-position government officials and the vampires and humans under Naruto himself knew about the branch. They were a shady group. Naruto prided in that fact even though he didn't like to lie to everyone. Actually, he wasn't lying, but giving half-truths, which was pretty much the same thing. He hoped that he was making the right decision on letting Harem in on the secret. He would have to deal with the consequences later. This time, they wouldn't be able to work this problem out without the help of Harem and his little posse. Naruto's ears picked up the sound of footsteps walking toward the night dorms and cocked his head, turning from the staircase to the double doors, with a questioning look on his face. The left door opened to reveal Zero and that bastard Sasuke, both wearing disgruntled expressions. "The hell are you two doing here?" Naruto demanded, giving them a look that included a raised eyebrow. "Chairman Cross wants us to see both of you stupid vampires off, since it's a responsibility of the perfects." Sasuke gave a glare as he recited what Cross told them. Inside, the blonde snorted. The Uchiha was such a drama queen. Naruto rolled his eyes. "We can take care of ourselves, thank you very much." He ignored the muttering, unfortunately, from Sasuke. He gave Zero a bright grin. Hi. We haven't been properly introduced yet. I'm Uzumaki na. Zero interrupted him before he got a chance to finish. I don't care what your name is, came the muttered retort. Naruto huffed and pointed an accusing finger at the two perfects. That is so rude. He exclaimed, wagging the appendages in front of their faces. Your mothers should be rolling in their graves from the shame you're causing them. The air froze. Naruto blinked, his eyes carefully taking in both expressions from the perfects, even as he pretended not to notice. Sasuke seemed to see that the comment, and Zero had entirely closed down, glaring with a cold look in his silver eyes. You know, if you keep those expressions up no girls will want to date you, Naruto remarked, keen blue eyes hidden by a close-eyed smile. He could practically hear Sasuke's teeth grinding together in fury and resisted the urge to smirk. To tease or not to tease. Idiot, the black-haired youth grated out, how, exactly, did you know that our parents were dead? Shit, a slip-up Naruto thought, giving an internal grimace. Well, he couldn't exactly tell them about a case that had happened years ago, could he? No, that would make matters worse. Naruto knew that there was this fine line that stopped both perfects from taking their weapons out to use on him. Though he knew he could probably take it well, it would just plain suck if it ruined the interior furnishings of the night dorms, wouldn't it? What do you mean? He asked instead, adding a small frown of confusion. Two pairs of cold eyes glared at him. However, they were interrupted by another voice that came from the top of the staircase. Uzumaki gave an internal sigh of relief and cheer at the disruption. Naruto-san. The blonde wanted to make a face when his heart started to beat slightly faster. Naruto turned with a grin instead. Heya, Kanem-sama. Took you long enough. He saw Kanem taking in the two perfects before glancing back at him with a blank face. Sorry. I had business to take care of before I could leave, came the murmured apology. Naruto grinned in response and looked back at the two perfects still seething by the door. Well, he said, bouncing energetically. Let's get going. Got things to do and people to see. He skipped to the door as he glanced behind him, twisting his body to beckon to the others before flashing outside. Kanem followed his lead and walked outside, raising an eyebrow when he heard Naruto happily talking to the gatekeeper. The two perfects gave a glare to nothing in particular before shuffling outside as well, trailing behind the two pure bloods. A few moments later saw the group heading on the path that showed the way out of the school. Naruto took in the peaceful atmosphere as his arms swung at his sides. So, Kanem-sama, he started, turning to look at the pure blood next to him. He admired the Kurinair with a quick check, taking in the fine-fitting clothes with a wistful glance. Kanem was wearing an open-throat sapphire blue shirt under an elegant black coat. Simple black slacks covered the pure blood's long and lean legs. It fit his graceful form beautifully. Naruto wanted to tear them off and have his naughty way with the wine-eyed vampire. A small blush formed on his cheeks and he looked away. Why do I hear a heart beating? Naruto thought wildly. I don't have one. Am I going crazy, or what? Yes. Kanem prompted when Naruto didn't continue. Why are you going out to the town anyway? Sasuke bit out from behind the two pure bloods. Naruto scowled at the rudeness. Boy. He barked out, craning his neck around to glare at the perfect. Don't barge in conversations. It's barbaric. At least act like a human, even though we know you aren't. He rolled his eyes, a habit he started to develop ever since he had started going to the school. Are you going to answer the question or not? Sasuke asked, irritated. Why do you care? Why are you avoiding answering the question? Why are you being so persistent in me answering the question? Just answer the fucking question. Sasuke roared, glaring at the blonde. Naruto stuck his tongue out at him and gave an indignant huff before changing expression and smiling innocently. It's a secret. He drew out the word and looked back at Kanem. I'll ask you the question once we get out. I can't exactly remember what I was going to ask anyway. Kanem glanced at him with a stare that had him internally squirming. Naruto wondered what those rich red wine eyes caught that no one else saw. Kanem seemed to agree but a few seconds later, nodding his head. Allowing his neck to pop disgustingly and ease some tension that had built up, Naruto grinned unrepentantly as he rubbed his hands eagerly. Now, he mused out loud, I wonder what I should get. When they were finally a few yards away from the gate leading to Cross Academy, Naruto sighed with relief and gave a brilliant smile to the waiting pure blood on his right. Kanem gave him a glance that showed he understood what Naruto was feeling, and the blonde caught the slight twitch on the Kurinairs as it tilted upward for a slight second. Naruto's world brightened the slightest bit before he remembered his promise, and he grew solemn, staring hard at the ground beneath him. He glanced up and gave Kanem his serious look. I know you want to know why I allowed you to come with me, Naruto started, giving Kanem a hard stare. He saw the flash of surprise in the other's eyes at how quickly his personality changed and felt a twinge of guilt. He pushed it off. What I'm going to tell you is top secret. No one can know about it. That includes the others back at the academy and the council of elders. Harem gave him an expressionless look and asked, "Is it really that serious?" Naruto gave a nod as he started to walk again, Harem at his side. "I have to get your word that you won't tell." Harem seemed to consider this, staring at Naruto though the blonde didn't look at him. Pure Blood's pledge. 1. Naruto mulled over the choice with a hint of surprise, though he didn't allow it to show on his face. A Pure Blood's pledge, huh? Naruto had almost forgotten about that type of promise. He was grateful it came up though. It meant that Harem was taking him seriously. The blonde once again hoped that he was doing the right thing telling Harem about the secret. Naruto nodded in acceptance and started off with a question. "Are you aware of the vampire murders that started around the time I transferred to Cross Academy?" he asked, looking at the town and the humans in it. Harem seemed to hesitate, though it was barely noticeable. "Yes," Harem answered, murmuring low. "I had strange sensations and summed it up that other vampires were being killed out here." Naruto gave a curt nod. "It's been happening for a while. During the 3 days I've been at the academy, there have been 6 vampire murders and 14 human murders." Naruto led Harem to the fountain as he glanced around from under his bangs. "What you're going to see is confidential, that borders on clandestine. You must not talk about it, no, don't even think about it. Okay?" Harem gave him a look that had a hint of an annoyed glare, though it seemed to soften immediately when it landed on him. "I already gave you my pledge." "I'll hold you to that," Naruto muttered. The blonde noticed no other people around and took the chance. He grabbed Harem's arm and ran, well, more like dived into the fountain. Extremely risky, Naruto knew, but he had to take it. He couldn't afford to keep his team waiting for him any longer now that he was out of the academy. He switched his focus to Harem, watching as the other pure blood took in the new settings as he shook out his wet hair. It was dark and wet. Naruto knew that these were the caves where his team had set up camp. Gaara had given him quick instructions on how to find them in the midst of everything. Naruto looked back at the fountain with a raised eyebrow. "Nifty," he said, grinning his approval. "I'll have to congratulate Niji for finding a cool place with a cool entrance." His vampire eyes switched on, and he noticed belatedly that Harem's had, too. The red film over his vision made things irritating for the blind. He hated it when they came on, though he admitted to not knowing why. It just made him feel stressed. He recalled the directions with a sigh and motioned Harem to follow him as they walked deeper into the maze. "I wonder if our little birds have noticed anything," a voice murmured, sounding amused and entertained. The room was dark and airy, with drips of water echoing throughout the cave. "We've spelt it out for them too much." "I agree. Not to mention, those boys are bright. Surely they would have caught on a long time ago." One made a noise of agreement. Another spoke out in disagreement. "But you can't know that. We've practiced the art of being subtle." "Ah, I guess we will have to stick around to watch." Red eyes looked at each other across the room, and one smirked. "Here's to our plan." And those rather morbid words were the last of the conversation. The red eyes disappeared. Uchiha Sasuke was irritated. Hell had risen in the form of one Uzumaki Naruto. No one knew it yet, but that blonde was the devil incarnate. Damn the bloodsucker. He was a blonde, a vampire, and a bright blonde vampire. He was a prankster, a damn Sasuke just wanted to rip him a new one. Period. He had woken up to a rude awakening this morning by one particularly annoying Chairman Cross, who came bouncing into his dark blissful room, wildly waving a noisemaker. As soon as his sanctuary had been invaded, Sasuke cut that damn thing like butter with his sword. Let's just say the Cross now mourned the thing like a father mourned his first son. Of course, the muttered words, "Naru-chan, great plan, but it didn't save my cute Noi-kun," didn't help Sasuke's mood one bit. That blonde bastard had put Cross up to doing this. And then Cross uttered those cursed words. "You and Zero will be escorting Naru-chan and Harem-kun to the gate." What the hell? Why the fuck would I do that? Sasuke muttered out angrily, set upon glaring fire at the father-like figure in front of him. The chairman smiled knowingly at him, making his gut twist. "Because we wouldn't want them to get lonely walking all that way, now would we?" he asked gleefully, skipping down the hallway to Zero's room. Of course, the day just got better from there depending on your definition and amount of sarcasm on better. That morning, Sasuke had to watch Naruto and Harem flirt with each other. Though it was done subtly, something about seeing those two made him want to blow a gasket. Or kick a tree. He wasn't sure if it was because they were both guys or what, but he didn't feel right letting those two out alone. And what bothered him more was the fact that Uzumaki Naruto, despite pretending, seemed to know of their pasts. Indeed, that blonde was the devil. There should have been no way for anyone to figure out his past. It made Sasuke wonder what else that blonde brat knew. Naruto couldn't possibly know about that, could he? Naruto looked back at the fountain with a raised eyebrow. "Nifty," he said, grinning his approval. "I'll have to congratulate Niji for finding a cool place with a cool entrance." His vampire eyes switched on, and he noticed belatedly that Harem's had, too. The red film over his vision made things irritating for the blind. He hated it when they came on, though he admitted to not knowing why. It just made him feel stressed. Recalling the directions with a sigh, he motioned the other pureblood to follow him as they walked deeper into the maze. Naruto and Kanem shuffled around in the darkness for a few seconds as their eyes adjusted to the stale and murky cave. Flexing his fingers experimentally, he tried not to wince at what was going to happen next. God, this was gonna hurt like fuck. He clenched his jaw. Sorry about this, Kanem-sama. And brought his arm to his mouth, letting his teeth sink in. One of his eyes closed in pain, though he endured everything else as his fist clenched, letting his blood flood into his mouth. He grimaced and retracted, spitting out the mixture of blood and drool onto the floor. Not noticing the other pair of red eyes looking at him with a strange hunger, he let his arm drip messily on the ground. Letting his eyes shift from his blood to Kanem, he gave a mirthless smirk. Ah, he said, rolling his eyes, the pain of being secretive. The other pure blood seemed to be staring thoughtfully at him. A heavy silence filled the cave again, shattered only with a drip, drip, drip of blood. Naruto tried his best to ignore the sound. Though he liked blood, drinking his own held little to no appeal for him. That was just you. He let his thoughts wander, wondering how the other pure blood was feeling at this point. Sure, Kanem was a pure blood, but there could only be so much blood one could handle. Not to mention, smells of powerful blood attracted flies like no other. Was it him or did Kanem's eyes trail up his body? The ground rumbled under them. Naruto shook off the heavy feeling as he turned his attention to watching a piece of the ground in front of them rise up, revealing a staircase. A light came faintly from the bottom of the stairs, and the blonde assumed that it was the lights coming from behind the door that sealed their headquarters off. Shaking his arm from any leftover blood, his arm was healing already. After all, he made his way down the steps and turned around to beckon the other red-eyed vampire with a playful grin. And as they made their way down, Kanem spoke. You know, you don't have to be so formal, he murmured, eyes trained in front of them to see where they were going. Naruto's feet almost missed a step as he whipped his head to face Kanem in shock. Just Kanem will be fine. For you. Naruto could only hope he didn't hear the last part in his head. That would suck having this much hope to fill him. And yet, as hope filled him, he couldn't help but be confused. Whenever he was around Kanem, things inside him were chaotic. He couldn't determine what he felt for the other quite yet, but there was this suspicious feeling that made Naruto want to blush. What has ever made Uzumaki Naruto, an egoistic pure blood, blush? There were only a handful of times he could remember. And 2 of those 5 fingers have been when he had been around Kanem. Before they got to the hallway, the door that blocked the light seemed to open, blasting the stairs with light. A dark figure stepped in front of the light again a few seconds later, and Naruto grinned. He knew that smell anywhere. Kiba. He shouted out, jumping down the rest of the stairs and quickly dashing into the hallway. Soon, Naruto's shadow joined the other. He didn't see the perked eyebrow from Kanem before the other followed him, more sedately, down the stairs to join him at the door. The entrance started closing as soon as he was off. Naruto tackled the human, gently, and grabbed him in a headlock, flashing a mischievous smile as he gave a noogie to the protesting guy. Fox face, what the fuck? I graciously opened the door for you, and you fucking attack me. Kiba still looked the same from when Naruto had last seen him, with those tarred brown eyes and messy brown hair. He missed this feeling. 2 months he had been deprived of his team, his one true family, and now that he was back, he was going to make the most of it. Dog breath, I friggin' missed you. You, and your stinky odor. Naruto let out a cheerful laugh, throwing his head back to let the laughter echo into space. Kanem studied the Namikaze clan heir with contemplative eyes. Naruto seemed to be a lot more spirited now that he was well. Where was he, in the first place? All he knew was that it was of the utmost importance, and the people working on this project were trying to be very careful about it. Seeing Naruto like this made a part of him ache. To be able to see this part of him so early, Kanem couldn't deny that he was shocked. That blonde looked like a fantasy creature come to life, smiling face thrust toward the ceiling, half shaded and half lighted, with just the tips of his fangs gleaming out of his mouth. Never had he seen something so real and up close before. It made Kanem consider talking more, to see the twinkle in the blonde's eyes like they were now as they looked at him. Kanem, this is Kiba, but most people forget his name, so you can call him Dog, Naruto said humorously, trying to be serious but failing. Kanem watched as the human tried to pry off Naruto's arms as he shouted, damn you, Naruto. Lem go. They had an interesting relationship, Kanem decided, nodding his head at the brunette, even though Kiba couldn't see him. Nice to meet you, he murmured politely. If you could do us a favor and end your hold on him, Naruto, rang out a smug female voice from inside the door. Maybe you could make him shut up for once. Ino, you bitch. Kiba howled out. I prefer the word vampire, you mutt, Ino replied, not sounding the least bit affected by the name calling. Aw, Ino. Naruto said, turning his head and giving a fake pout. You're giving the rest of us vampires a bad name. He finally released the human, who stumbled a bit before righting himself to glare at the pure blood. Naruto wasn't the least bit affected by it, giving another playful grin to Kiba before turning to Kanem. He said sheepishly, considering the silence at the school, you'll probably have to get used to having headaches from the noise this bunch makes. But ice a change in scenery, Kanem admitted slowly, reining in the impulse to raise an eyebrow. However, I think I'll do just fine. Dude. Kiba exclaimed, finally taking notice of the other pure blood. That's awesome. And you're another pure blood, right? Whoa. You're so much more wicked looking than I thought you would be. As you can see, Foxface isn't a good example of what a pure blood is. Kanem barely held back a snort at the outraged look on Naruto's face. I rather like the way he is, Kanem said thoughtfully, invoking another light blush. Seeing this, he said nothing, knowing it wouldn't be appreciated. Naruto squinted at him and crossed his arms grumpily. The blonde grumbled, you're just saying that, you liar. This time, Kanem did not hold back the eyebrow raise. Naruto, dear, stop insulting people better looking than you, the voice of Ino purred. Rich wine eyes moved to look at the other blonde in a passing glance, trying to ignore the way her pale blue eyes stared at him. Unwanted human lust was bad enough for him to have to deal with unwanted vampire lust too. Kanem expelled a sigh silently, trying to keep a light frown from passing over his face. But she asked all of them a question instead of going after Kanem like he expected. Well, are we going to stay out here like idiots, or go into the nice cold building? Kiba snorted and walked into the room, Ino following. Still grumbling, Naruto looked over at Kanem with a peeved look before rolling his eyes and jerking his head to the door, flouncing through the opening and holding the door open patiently. Kanem held back another sigh and entered. The draft of icy air flushed over his skin 5 seconds into the building. Kanem took in the settings the modern technology are running through the walls, and such amazed him. The room itself was a security check, with cameras watching the cave, the fountain and a few places in town. An empty desk sat with a watch station, and Kurin thought he heard Naruto mutter something about getting on someone's ass for not doing his job. Farther past the opening room lay yet another corridor, and Naruto paused outside a new door to do something weird and quick that Kanem couldn't catch. He had an inkling of suspicion that Naruto didn't quite trust him yet, that made the door open for them. See? Kiba was bragging inside. I told you that he was here. Naruto seemed to twitch at the comment by the Kurinair's side. Kiba, Naruto said in an irritated voice, interrupting the conversation. Well, I'm glad you want to socialize and gossip about how I'm actually here today. I'd like to remind you that I'm also your boss, and that you left the watch station without permission. As Naruto ranted about how Kiba should be doing his job, Kanem took a quick assessment of how the room looked. Not very surprising though, since he assumed how the room would look based on the watch station. This part of the room was filled with big monitors, a few computers attached to different screens, and the walls were designed to look as if they were made of metal. It was the perfect example of a very modern office room. The thing that did catch him off guard was the homey part opposite of where he was standing. It was like a nice little lounge, complete with a bar and a comfy looking couch, and there were more hallways that lead to other places, Kanem thought to be maybe their rooms. Naruto huffed by his side, finally finished ranting. I swear, you're gonna kill us all one day, Kiba. A scowl on his face, he turned to the other pure blood. I'm sorry this idiot made a bad impression of us. The rest of the guys are far more competent than the mutt. I would have been insulted if you hadn't said that, a new guy replied, walking from the hallway. Ah. Naruto said, grinning. Just the person I was looking for. Uchiha Sasuke remembered what joy felt like. He remembered what having parents and a sibling was like, along with the ups and downs that came with them. He could tell you what it felt like to smile, and to laugh and sing, and to be able to play with your friends. The man was smiling at him from his spot by the walls, his fangs glinting with nothing but malicious thoughts and crimson red. A scream bubbled in his throat, yet it refused to budge as he stood paralyzed to the spot. He could also tell you what it felt like to see your world crumble into nothingness. He could weave a dark story about what it felt like to wake up in the middle of the night and witness your parents getting slaughtered. His life revolved around that one night. All of the joy he felt at life had disappeared as he witnessed things no child should have to witness. Now it was as if he were merely a doll, silently wishing to be able to come to his senses and become a real boy again. Not that it would ever happen. Many people didn't know about him and the secrets he held. Nor did they know about his terrible dark truth that caused him to look at the man reflected in the mirror with hatred. He hated vampires, hated. Did he truly though? Sasuke narrowed his eyes at the figure staring back at him through the dark, his hand clenching into a fist on the surface of the sink. Though it was still daytime, the bathroom lights weren't up, and he made no move to right that. Outside, the rest of the students were probably milling about, trying to talk to their friends from the other classrooms at the last minute. He paid the thought no mind, dismissing the thought without any subconscious effort. Them skipping now and then wasn't a big deal. He was a prefect after all. The chairman cared less about his absence in school-related things, as long as he showed up and got good grades. Hell, even Zero got away with doing the same thing. The only thing that mattered was keeping those vampires in line. Red eyes flashed in the dark. Sasu couldn't stop the horrible glare that fell onto his face, causing the glass to crack in front of him, a stray light bouncing off one of the cracked pieces to shine into his faintly glowing red eyes. Why the hell had fate made him one of them? Naruto huffed by his side, finally finished ranting. I swear, you're gonna kill us all one day, Kiba. A scowl on his face, he turned to the other pure blood. I'm sorry this idiot made a bad impression of us. The rest of the guys are far more competent than the mutt. Everyone ignored Kiba when he started protesting. I would have been insulted if you hadn't said that, a new guy replied, walking from the hallway and leaning tiredly on the side of the entrance. Ah. Naruto said, grinning. Just the person I was looking for. Harem peered at the man, taking in the brunette's features. He held a tired look on his face, though there was a slightest hint of a smirk, slouching by the hallway entrance, as if it were too much to even attempt a straight posture. One hand was pushed loosely in a pocket located on his black slacks, and the shirt he was wearing was plain and white. His mouth opened to yawn, and Harem's eyes zoomed in to catch the blunt-looking incisors located in his mouth. Ah, so he was a human too, huh? However, the air around the new arrival was anything but normal for the species. The aura the human managed to give off was cunning, and Harem would have been stupid to not admit something was weird about this new guy. Naruto turned his head slightly, motioning the other forward as he grinned at Harem. You're going to love this guy. Naruto was practically vibrating due to excitement. He has to be a once-in-a-lifetime genius the humans get. His IQ is off the charts. He skipped middle school and went straight to junior year in high school, only getting B's in AP because he slept too much in class. Harem, I'd like to introduce Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru, this is the other pure blood I was talking about. When the blonde finally finished, he was beaming the brightest smile, as if the parent of such a human. Harem resisted the strange urge to quirk at the display. Harem nodded slightly at the brunette. Nice to meet you, Nara-san, he said politely, returning his gaze back to Naruto not a second later. The pleasure is all mine, Kuren-sama. A warning lurked in those words. The wine-eyed pure blood idly noted he would have to make sure to not make any slip-ups during the time spent around the lazy genius. Okay. Naruto said brightly, acting as if he didn't notice anything. Harem knew there was no way he would have missed any of that exchange. He introduced Yamanaka Ino, the blonde vampire earlier who seemed to take pleasure from torturing Kiba, before telling Harem that everyone else was either sleeping still or out on patrol around the town. Motioning everyone to the bar, Naruto sat near Harem and looked at him with once more serious eyes. Seeming to muse out loud, he asked, I haven't told you why you're here today, have I? Looking at the blonde with shrewd, very intense eyes, Harem softly asked, and what is the purpose of my being here, Naruto-kun? Naruto seemed to go wide-eyed with shock for a second at his newly appointed name, a very faint blush coming through his ears before schooling his features once more. The Kurinair couldn't help but find that slightly endearing, and the barest hint of a smile once again wiggled its way to him before disappearing. As I've told you, during the past few days, there have been a lot of recent murders going around, and victims both human and vampire have been targeted, the blonde started, a light frown touching his face, but what I haven't told you is that everyone here, Naruto gestured to the whole place, has come to solve the crime. We're a force that works independently from the government and the Council of Elders, and anything they can't clean up, we do. The name they know us by is VRYKOLAKA'1. However, that is all that they know us by, and have been trying to get information from us since the start of time. Except for Kiba, since he doesn't do anything, Ino murmured, snickering when said guy whipped his head around to glare. He muttered something angrily to himself before standing up silently and letting himself out the room, most likely to do a security check. Lately, Naruto continued, ignoring his teammates, all of our information on this case has gone to hell. Anything we had assumed of the perpetrator has been shot down suddenly, and any clue as to what had been going on has been a 180 from what's going on presently. There used to be a trend in the victim's blood type, but it switched from AB to O a few weeks ago. The victims used to only be guys from the age of 20 to 40 in human years, and 20 to 80 in vampire years, and suddenly they turned into boys, all ages, and women too. We don't know what's going on. Harem, observing the silence that now permeated through the air, came to a conclusion. And that's why you came to our school. You thought you would be able to find more clues and, not to mention, enlist the help of others with connections. There had to be more than that though, but he kept that thought to himself. Naruto would tell him everything when the time came, or he would just find out for himself in time. Bingo. Naruto grinned and clapped, obviously happy Harem was getting it. He held out a hand in front of Harem, his smile becoming softer. "So what do you say, Kanam-sama? Do you think you can help us?" As the pureblood made a move to take the outstretched hand, the entrance door once again opened, and in stepped two others. Kanam studied them. One had long, black hair and white pupils, and Kanam summed it up to the fact that he was a vampire. He had never seen a human with such eyes, nor heard of one. The other one, however, he was unsure about. Red hair and green eyes weren't exactly a common trait among vampires or humans around the area they were located in. If anything, this one seemed like Shikamaru, with the air being cold around him. The one with the long, black hair seemed to zero in on Kanam, just as he shook Naruto's hand with a small smile and "Sure, Naruto-kun." The cold air he gave off made Kanam feel just a tiny bit threatened, and he couldn't help but feel impressed. It had been a long time since Kanam had felt like this. "Who is that?" The two purebloods broke their handshake and turned to stare at the redhead, who spoke out quietly. Naruto seemed to be happy with the two new people, gesturing them over to where they sat. Ino seemed to be angry with the tone the redhead used and looked like she was about to hiss something before Naruto started talking again. Naruto spoke a little forcefully, though his tone remained happy, "is Kurin Kanam." The temperature in the room dropped a little as Kanam surveyed the two without any restrictions. Though the Kurin air was nice most of the time, there was only so much insolence he could handle before it started to tick him off. It was a good thing that Naruto appeared to catch on to this, a hint of warning in his blue eyes. Naruto turned back to Kanam after sharing a long eye contact with the two newcomers, giving another sheepish grin that spoke of an apology. Naruto introduced them quickly, and Kanam found out that the one with pale eyes was a Hyuga, one of the most elite noble vampire names to have ever been heard around the area. He wondered why such a person was here undercover and why he had never heard of him. A small furrow of questions appeared on Kanam's face, but he held back the questions as he fought to keep his expression blank. He repeated the motto that had been running around in his head since he arrived. "Only time will tell." There were only a handful of times when Naruto had ever felt true irritation at his subordinates. Unfortunately for him, a new time was added to the plate when he saw how disrespectful Neji and Gaara were acting around Kanam. What the hell were they taking? Crack. He'd never seen them act like this to anyone before, nor heard stories of such. They were normally respectful of those in a higher position than theirs, so it was ridiculous for them to start with Kanam of all people. Kanam was one of the vampires you would want to respect. The kind light in his eyes and the graceful, subdued way he carried himself made vampires of any position want to follow Kanam to the end of the world, purebloods included. Naruto thought about his two friends carefully as he introduced Kanam to them. Neji and Gaara were naturally suspicious people. Maybe that had something to do with their behavior. When Naruto had told them about letting Kanam in on their case, they hadn't exactly liked it, but they had seemed accepting about it. Was it because they had time to think it over? Damn it. If only there was such a class called Vampire Psychology 101. It would have been useful in this situation. When the blonde vampire saw a small spark of annoyance flash in Kanam's eyes, he prayed to whatever god was listening to help him get through the case. It was gonna be a very bumpy road. After those headache-inducing introductions, Naruto quickly ushered himself and Kanam out of the headquarters. He needed some fresh air to snap himself out of the temper that had begun to build up inside of himself, and, as he looked over at Kanam, the other seemed to need it as much as he did. "Sorry about my team," Naruto apologized, rolling his eyes. "I haven't seen them act like that before. I don't understand why they're acting like this now." "It's fine," Kanam replied, a small smile gracing him. "I'm sure I would act the same in their position." Naruto blinked. Did Kanam know something he didn't? Please tell him that he wasn't that big of a fail leader to not have caught on to something Kanam did. And over his own team. Goodness. He wasn't sure how to react to that. His thoughts were distracted when Kanam let out a barely audible chuckle. He glanced over to see the pureblood raising an eyebrow at him, a less than noticeable smile on his face. "You shouldn't pout like that, Naruto-kun," Kanam explained, eyes warm as they crinkled with mirth. "You'll get wrinkles on that good-looking face of yours." The blonde couldn't stop the slight blush that crossed his face. It wasn't the praise for his looks that made him want to cover his face though, it was the smile that Kanam was aiming at his direction. Who knew Kanam could look nicer than he already did? Naruto quickly decided he was in a love-hate relationship with the case they were working on. On the hate side was frustrating, stupid shit that just made him want to bang his head into the wall. On the love side, there was very nice eye candy. Staring into the other pureblood's eyes, he wasn't exactly sure which side was overpowering the other at the moment. Trying to cover up his thoughts, Naruto let out a laugh. "Police. This face. Getting wrinkles. I don't think so. They know not to mar my beauty for fear of my wrath." He grinned. "That seems very likely," Kanam agreed easily, the smile on his face becoming more apparent. This time, Naruto didn't care about the light blush that dusted over his cheeks as he beamed back. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow